First Samuel, God commands Saul to go and kill all the Amalekites as well as their animals and take all their possessions and destroy them. Why does he do this? It seems unjust and unloving.
Yeah, so this is from 1 Samuel 15, so let's go and just review the story quick. So we see here that God tells Samuel to go and tell Saul to go and attack the Amalekites and wipe them out, kill everything. And the reason that he does this, the reason that he gives here is that the people of the Amalekites had attacked Israel as they were journeying from Israel to the Promised Land. The Amalekites had come and attacked them just unprovoked. And so God was using this as a punishment to the Amalekites. And so we see here in the story that Saul gathers the whole army and he goes and attacks the Amalekites and they're victorious. They win the battle. But Saul doesn't do what God commands. He doesn't kill all of the animals. He saves the best and brings them with him. And he saves the king of the Amalekites and brings him with him. And so God tells Samuel that Saul has disobeyed. And so Samuel goes and meets Saul. And we see in the story that he says this. Samuel says this to Saul. Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? And he says this because Saul's excuse for saving the animals was, oh, we're going to give these as a sacrifice to God. So he saves the best animals and then claims that he's going to use them as a sacrifice to God. And so Samuel says, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. And then he says a little bit later, because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. And so Saul's punishment in the story is God rejects him. God's spirit leaves Saul. And we see a little bit later that he goes and Samuel goes and anoints David as king.
Yeah. But even so, this seems like proof, like the story seems like proof that God's just hateful. Like, to kill a whole people group, like, and plus it's like, it's not even stuff that they did, it's like judging them for what their grandparents and what their parents said.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's important to remember, again, that the Bible doesn't record every detail of every story. And so we don't know everything that this generation of the Amalekites that were doing, and because we see the judgment that God brings on them, we can be confident that they were still sinning. And we also know that the punishment of sin is death. And God is a just God. And so in his justice, he must punish sin. And so he uses the people of Israel and Saul to carry out this justice and to kill the Amalekites.
Isn't this something that Christians have used in the past to justify the Crusades and other atrocities like that?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that we need to talk about because yes, stories like this have been used to justify terrible things that have been done by Christian nations or nations that claim to be Christian. And so we see the difference here in 1 Samuel is the people of Israel are God's people. They are led by God through the voice of the prophet Samuel. And so God is able and right to use them as his instrument of justice against the people of Amalek. And so what we can't do is take the people of Israel back then and say, oh, we can do the same thing as America or wherever we're from. Because America or the nations back during the Crusades, none of those are nations that are truly led by God. They might claim to be, but we see here in the Bible that the people of Israel were very unique in that they were God's people. Something that no one else in history really can claim. And so we can't use these stories as justification for attacking or destroying people.
Yeah, but I mean, even so, it still seems a little bit hateful.
Yeah, and so another very important thing to remember is just that the punishment of sin is death. And so as we read stories like this, knowing that God in his justice is perfect and right to carry out judgment against sin. And the penalty of sin is death. And so we see this throughout history, pain and suffering and anguish and hardship because of the sin in the world. And we see brokenness and hurt. And we see destruction. And in instances like this, God is using the people of Israel to carry out his judgment. And I think stories like this should bring us back to just remembering what Jesus has done in taking and dying on the cross, in his blood, washing away sin. We no longer have to be under the judgment and wrath of God. We can instead be in communion with him. We can instead have a relationship with him and experience his love because Jesus paid that price for the sin that happens in our lives and the lives of others.